Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kelsey and welcome back to a new vlog. In today's video, I have a really exciting vlog. I got this idea from Hannah over at A Clockwork Reads. One of her favorite books is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, and I've always wanted to read this classic. I haven't read classics in a really long time. I think it's due to my English degree and how I just was burnt out on classics, and I read a lot of classics and I knew that I just needed to take a little break. We're back. I read a classic for this vlog, but the idea came to me that when Hannah read Verity by Colleen Hoover, she mentioned that it was like a Walmart brand of Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, and thus the vlog idea came to my brain. I wanted to read these two books and compare the two. So the first book I read in this vlog is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. This follows a young narrator who goes unnamed for a really long time, who marries this single widow named Maxim. And Maxim is the owner of this sprawling mansion named the Manderley. And when Maxim brings over our young narrator, his new bride, a lot of things come to fruition as she feels lonely and abandoned in this really big, sprawling, empty mansion. And she's sort of haunted every day by the ghost of Maxim's dead wife named Rebecca. Verity by Colleen Hoover follows a sort of similar plot. We have Lowen Ashley, who is a struggling writer on the brink of financial ruin, and she accepts the job offer of a lifetime, and this is to complete the remaining books left in a series written by Verity Crawford. Lowen arrives at the Crawford home and settles in order to write her book. At this home, the husband of Verity, named Jeremy, is also living there with their son Crew. Upon arriving at that house, when she is doing research in order to complete the books of Verity, Lowen stumbles upon a manuscript that reveals Verity's bone-chilling admissions. So let's get into the vlog where I compare the two books, and we'll come back in the end to know my full thoughts. Hello, so I'm sure I've done a much better introduction than this when my hair is all wet and whatever, but I did want to mention that a couple of days ago I started Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I kept pushing this vlog off, so I'm excited to finally start it and to read classics. I don't prioritize classics a lot ever since I graduated from my English degree, and I was classics out, I guess. I got about 12 pages into this one. I'm listening to it while reading it at the same time. Right now in my reading journey, if you guys have watched my wrap-ups in the last year and a half, I've been mostly listening to audiobooks while reading the page. But I find specifically with classics, this really helps me because I tend to zone out when I'm reading writing that I find difficult to focus on. So the audiobook does really help with that. And I am listening to it at a bit of a slower pace at 2.5 speed. I usually listen to audiobooks at around 3 speed, but because this is a classic, I do want to really focus on the words and the intentions behind everything. And so far, I'm really enjoying it. I think Daphne du Maurier has such a really great writing style. I'm finding it to be far more easier than I expected it to be, but also really engaging and mysterious. Enjoying it so far. I'm only 12 pages in, so I don't really know what to say. I'll probably come to you at the 100-page mark, just to let you know how the first fourth of the novel is going. So I'll see you then. So I wanted to update because I got to page 50 just now, so that's chapter 6. And so far I'm really enjoying the writing, particularly in this book. I think the writing is so interesting and captivating, and Daphne du Maurier really has a way with words and a way of captivating readers. Even though nothing in particular has really happened, it's a lot of social calling, a lot of comedy, not comedy of manners, but that sort of thing, very much going with the way that society expects you to be. Then Maxim is coming in as sort of a throw from what our main character is used to, and our main character doesn't have a name, and I think that's very purposeful. Obviously, we are in this book to compare our main character to Mrs. Manderley, who we don't know is Rebecca, but I know is Rebecca. And Maxim and our main character are getting to know each other a bit better, but we can already see that Maxim has sort of a temperament, and I feel like that's going to come into play later on. It's very gothic, very mysterious. I'm really enjoying it, honestly. I think I'm going to update you in another 50 pages, and then we'll move on to 100 pages. But so far, very intriguing. Hello, so last night I got to page 188. I'm flying through this. Once I sat down and like focus on this book, I fly through it because the writing, like I said in the last clip, is just so easy. So at this point in the plot, we're really diving into Manderley. Not necessarily Manderley as a character. Like a lot of Gothic novels, the setting tends to be its own character. As of right now, you can tell that there's this Gothic spookiness to Manderley, but it's not necessarily its own character as of late. What we're really learning is the other characters that make up Manderley. So the butler, the housemaid, the man who works at the docks near the beach, that kind of thing. And we're learning a lot about Rebecca as a character. So what I've been noticing in the book, particularly with my notes, is that I'm curious if this novel was meant to be as spooky as I think it is to more modern readers. Maxim himself is somewhat of a horrific character. He is a man that... Do I have snot on my nose? Oh my god, that's so embarrassing. He is a man that is really, really mean to our main character in today's age. Like, I don't know necessarily if he would be seen as a scarier character back then. Like, yes, he has like his whims and he has like secrets, but was he considered scary? Because in my opinion, he's like abusive. So I don't know. So I'm curious if people found Maxim to be scary and to be his own kind of horrific part of Manderley, for example. So there's many references to Maxim being older and thus many references to Rebecca being older, right? So Maxim is not old, he's 40. But compared to our main character, who I'm assuming is quite young because she's very malleable, like very moldable, Maxim can really tell her like whatever he thinks. And she's sort of like, oh, do whatever you want. And like when Mrs. Danvers, who is the house like maid, I don't know what she does, she's like, what do you want us to do, Mrs. De Winter? You know, like our narrator's like, do whatever you want. So she doesn't really have a sense of like purpose. And I think that's another point of the book. We don't even get our narrator's name because she's, I don't think, the main character of the book or important to us at all. The importance is her comparison to Rebecca. So if Maxim's older, we can assume that Rebecca was also older than our main character. Our narrator is perceived as being very young and small and naive in comparison to Rebecca's constant mentions of elegance and confidence. Rebecca owned the home. Rebecca decided what happened in the home. She made her own decisions. There's talks of her going off on her own without Maxim and doing whatever she wanted. So I think that that's a really interesting comparison so far because the book is called Rebecca. Manderley has the spirit of Rebecca and our main character doesn't even deserve a name in this book. So I think that that's a really interesting device that's being used by Daphne du Maurier. So I'm really, really, really enjoying it. So I'm starting off my morning now, just finished my coffee. I think I'm going to read a little bit and then get into work. So, oh my God. The party, page 239, I'm freaking out. Okay, so much has happened in the last like 100 pages. Firstly, there was that thing that I was like freaking out about, which was that our main character came down and we got a bunch of revelations. First of all, we got our main character's first name, which is Caroline, because she was announced by those people that wait at the bottom of the stairs and announce people. I don't know what they're called. Not only is she coming down, not only do we get her first name, the only time in the book in 200 pages that we've gotten her name, she's wearing a dress that was owned by Rebecca, and specifically the dress that was owned by Rebecca and worn by Rebecca the like either last night or last time that they hosted a party. And this is the first time that Caroline is hosting a party. We get this like duality of Caroline as a character, right? We have her name being spoken to the first time, so this loss of this mysterious and innocent naivete, but also this like disruption of the norm and this disruption of Rebecca as this mysterious figure. Then we also see a lot of grief from Mrs. Danvers. So in the beginning of the book, a lot of Mrs. Danvers's like mysteriousness and the fact that she's moving around the house and she is very secretive and seems to have this vendetta against Caroline, our narrator. I was thinking it of like, okay, but she's like grieving, like she was the maid to Rebecca, so obviously she's going to have more grieving to do. She's sort of like a motherly figure to Rebecca. And then we have this whole scene where Mrs. Danvers is telling our narrator that she will never become Rebecca. She's not good enough to be Rebecca. All these sort of things that are sort of a vocalized version of our narrator's thoughts, and that our narrator is obsessed with Rebecca, much like Mrs. Danvers is obsessed with Rebecca. This figure that they are both obsessed with, part and part with Mrs. Danvers as a grieving mother and our narrator as like a jealous new wife coming into the home. So we had that scene, which was really crazy. And now we just have a revelation that I'm not going to get into because I do find this specific revelation to be surprising. Like, I did not expect that at all. And I don't know how much of it is a true revelation or if it is a test from Maxim's part. But Maxim reveals something to our narrator in relation to Rebecca and to the plot or what we know of Rebecca and Rebecca's death. We'll see how that develops. I think it's too easy of a revelation, but also it was still shocking to me. So I'm going to finish up this book and then come back to you with my final thoughts on this book. Hello, so I just finished Rebecca and I immediately needed to come on here to talk about my feelings because I think it was fairly obvious, but I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was absolutely phenomenal. Every time I dive into like classics, I'm always really worried that the writing is going to be too distant from me and I'm intimidated and I'm worried that I'm not going to understand them or enjoy them. But this was absolutely not the case with Rebecca. I think I said it several times in the past clips, but the writing was so easy to get into and to understand. And I really wish that I had read this in my English degree because I feel like I could have dived into the many themes that were used and the techniques that Daphne du Maurier used to like convey her themes. Du Maurier's writing is absolutely beautiful and mysterious, and that really helped to add to the atmosphere of the overall novel. While this wasn't necessarily creepy or spooky, I went into this thinking that it was sort of a horror-y novel, but I don't think it's really that. But there is definitely a like eerie feeling that permeates throughout the novel. Our narrator's obsession with Rebecca and the Manderley home was so interested, and I was really fascinated with how du Maurier was able to convey this throughout her novel. I couldn't give this a full 5 stars because there were some elements of this book that are like of its time and did make me feel a little uncomfortable while reading it. So I just want to like mention that because there are some things that occur that are like, okay, that definitely happened at the time. But otherwise, this was a really great read. I gave it 4.5 stars. I'm so shocked by how much I love this, but I'm really happy that I ended up reading a classic and enjoying it. And now we get into the sort of thesis of this video. I'm going to dive into a book that has been compared to Rebecca in a negative way, and that is Verity by Colleen Hoover. This is particularly mentioned by Hannah over at A Clockwork Reader, who like specifically said, and I quote, "the unseasoned Walmart brand version of Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier." And now, having read Rebecca and absolutely loving this book, I want to see how Verity holds up in comparison. I know they're not the same thing, but I'm very excited to analyze it, to see. Verity follows Lowen Ashley, who is a struggling writer on the brink of financial ruin when she accepts the job offer of a lifetime. Jeremy Crawford is a husband of a best-selling author, Verity Crawford, and he has hired Lowen to complete the remaining books in a successful series his injured wife is unable to finish. Lowen arrives at the Crawford home ready to sort through years of Verity's notes and outlines, hoping to find enough material to get her started. What Lowen doesn't expect to uncover is that the chaotic office is an unfinished autobiography Verity never intended anyone to read. Page after page of bone-chilling admissions include Verity's recollection of what really happened the day her daughter died. Given what I know about Rebecca, I can see how this is sort of related. It also feels a little bit Jane Eyre, which I have also read and enjoyed. So I'm very excited to get into this one. I really hope I finish this quite quickly because I do want to get this video out for you guys. It's running a bit delayed as with every vlog I ever post. I'm going to get into that now. I'm going to listen to it before I get to bed. We'll see how far I get through. I will update you. Hello, I'm about to go to bed because I'm exhausted, but I only got 13% into Verity. It's giving Colleen Hoover, you know? Sex is mentioned, I feel like at least every other page. Our main character, Lon, is that how it's pronounced? Her relationship to men is constantly in reference to sex, so that's been really interesting. And it opened with quite an interesting opening of our main character witnessing someone in a car crash. Is it foreshadowing because Verity was in a car crash? Who knows? Only time will tell. But so far, I'm not particularly enjoying this. Okay, bye. So I'm now 36% of the way through this, and I wanted to just give like a little catch up on my feelings. I think that it's easy to read. I'm definitely flying through it. Am I enjoying the story? I don't really know. It's very sexual. Immediately upon reading it, you could tell that Verity, from these like diary entries, autobiographical stuff, that she's severely fucked up. We just finished a chapter where Verity's talking about how she wanted to like her unborn babies because her husband Jeremy is a loving father and says that he's going to care for them more than her, and she's like, no thank you. So I can sort of see where this story is going if I understand Verity as a main character. We're gonna see if it shocks me, because the number one thing that I see with a lot of people is that this book shocks them. Nothing so far in this book has really surprised me. I've read from Colleen Hoover before, so I know how she writes her main characters, her main heroines, and her main love interests. I don't know, like so far it's okay. That's how I feel about it. We'll see as the story progresses what I think, but there's definitely this like Gone Girl, Jane Eyre, Rebecca type of atmosphere. Like Lone, I don't know how to pronounce that name, is very obsessed with Verity. But I think Verity is also obsessed with Lone. So we'll see how this further develops. Hello, so I wanted to give a quick update just because I'm at the gym right now and my boyfriend is upstairs with my sister's dog. So there's quite a bunch of a noise upstairs and I just wanted to update when I could, especially because this is a shorter update. I don't know how far I'm into the book, but I do know that I have 35 minutes left on like 3 times speed, so maybe like an hour and a half about left. And so far we can really tell that our main character Lone is obsessed with Verity, and she mentions quite frequently that she sees Verity in the house. She sees Verity looking at her. There's some creepy things that Verity is doing. We don't really know because Lone is kind of set up as this like unreliable narrator because she sleepwalks, and one night she finds herself in Verity's bed. But I don't know if we're supposed to take that as like her obsession with Verity is so strong that we like can't even trust her opinion. I don't know. I don't know if you could tell, like by the way I'm describing or talking with the lack of updates, that I just don't care about this storyline. At the same time that this is going on with Lone and she's like super into Verity's husband, and they have confirmed on page Fucked, the book is intersliced with chapters from like Verity's autobiography, and Verity's like talking about how she hates her children and she's obsessed with Jeremy, and that she only has kids because Jeremy wants them, and she's like thought about like killing her children and stuff like that. So she's obviously very disturbed, so it makes these scenes where Verity is like watching Lone a bit more creepier, and I definitely like feel that vibe. I think Colleen Hoover like is actually doing a good job with that. But if I have to hear about how this woman fucks her husband one more time, like intersliced with paragraphs of her talking about wanting to kill her children, like I swear to God, I can't handle this anymore. So obviously this is set up to set Verity in like a negative light so that Lone's obsession with her is like validated. So we'll see where this goes, but I have a feeling that all is not what it sets up to be. I just recorded all of this and I wasn't even recording. I did have drinks today. I'm sorry. Let's get into this wrap up. I did finish Verity by Colleen Hoover, and I think it was very apparent by the clips in this vlog that this book was all right to me. There were definitely moments in the novel that spooked me, but I think that's more because I'm a big baby and not that the writing itself was good. Our main character, Lone, was just insufferable. So to be honest, I didn't really care what happened to her. I didn't really care like what was going on and how it affected her in any way. The pacing in this book was really fast, and I think that was a good thing because I ended up speeding through the novel. And I think if it was more slow paced like Rebecca, I just would have hated it even more. And on the flip side, I definitely felt like too much was happening for the amount of pages that it was. And I didn't feel like there was any real explanation as to why things were happening. Like Lone moving in, her falling in love so quickly with Jeremy, reading the manuscript, like nothing felt like it had a lot of depth. Speaking of the manuscript, if you want to ask me if I'm team manuscript or team letter, If I had to really care, I think I would be team manuscript. I feel like Verity was set out to be a more manipulative character on Colleen Hoover's part. So I think that the last letter was thrown in as sort of a second twist. But I think Verity in and of itself was a more manipulative character and sort of wrote this letter to cover her tracks. So if you want to know in that sense if I'm team letter or team manuscript, I would definitely say manuscript, just because I feel like that would be the intent of Colleen Hoover's story. But overall, I definitely enjoyed Rebecca more. I understand what Hannah was saying. Verity just felt like a conglomeration of Rebecca, Gone Girl, Jane Eyre, and it just cannot compete with those classics. I think I've just read too many books at this point for the twists in Verity to be shocking in any way. So I ended up giving this 2 stars. I definitely enjoyed Rebecca a whole lot more. And that's it. That's the end of this vlog. If you've read either Verity or Rebecca, please let me know down below your thoughts. I would love to talk about it. And if you would like to follow me on any of my other social medias, I do leave a link down below to my Twitter, Goodreads, and Instagram if you would like to follow me there. And of course, because it is the end of the video, please do not forget to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. It does wonders for my channel. It makes me feel really good. And that's it. I never know how to end these things, so I will see you next time. Okay, bye!